Ladies and gentlemen, in today's video I'm going to be going through and reacting to my pre-season Premier League and EFL table predictions. We're going to go through all four of England's top divisions and see what my predictions are like. Spoiler, again, it's not gone very well. I'm not great at this, to be completely honest with you. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe. 200 likes on today's video would be massively appreciated. Let's waste no further time and get straight into it. We'll start out firstly with the Premier League and the teams that I predicted to finish in the relegation zone. Normally we go through each position individually and each league has their own video, but we're not going to waste as much time today and we'll try and get through them all as quick as possible. But my bottom three in the Premier League, I had Leeds United, Burnley and Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now Burnley I got absolutely spot on. Wolves did also end up going down, which I don't think many people actually predicted. Clearly I was pretty wrong though about Leeds United. I thought they'd finish at rock bottom. I was not convinced on Daniel Farke as a manager. Maybe there was a little bit of Bradford City bias creeping through, thinking that they would go down again, but I think it was around November time when Farke went to the back three, and we know that Leeds are recruited to be big and physical in the summer, but he really did turn it around. It'll be interesting to see how next season does go now that everybody knows what Leeds are going to offer. Can Calvert-Lewin stay fit as well for next campaign? But for this year, as much as it pains me to say, you've got to say fair play to them. They have managed to avoid relegation, but I don't think they are the worst predictions in the world, and Burnley are one of the 4 or 5 across all 4 of the leagues that I've got absolutely spot on. Having a look at the rest of the bottom half, there's some pretty decent predictions in here. I was spot on with Fulham, just 1 place out on West Ham, just 2 out on Crystal Palace, but clearly I was very wrong about Sunderland. I don't think many people really back Sunderland to survive, let alone finish in, I think, the Europa League spots. It gets very confusing with who finishes where and what actual European competition that means, but I'm pretty sure Sunderland are now in the Europa League. Clearly I was incredibly wrong about Manchester United, but I think if Ruben Amorim had stayed there for the full season, I think they probably would have finished in and around 15. Obviously Bruno Fernandes again largely carrying at Manchester United, but they had a great season, especially under Michael Carrick, and I'm glad that he's now got the opportunity to prove himself as a real elite manager. Brentford, I was a fair few places out. I thought they'd have a bit of regression losing Thomas Frank and bringing in Keith Andrews, but they finished again in the top half. Nottingham Forest maybe underwhelmed me a little bit, given got some good quality players in their side like Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White, for example. They're probably going to lose one if not both of them this summer, so how do they go about replacing them? But again, I don't think they're the worst predictions in the world, bar the odd 1 or 2. Into the top half then, I had Bournemouth finishing in 10th. I was a couple places out on that one. Iriola has done a great job there. I think again Bournemouth are now going to be in the Europa League, but obviously Iriola is also now going to be leaving, so maybe he feels like he's taken them as far as what he can. Everton I was a fair few places out with. I'm a bit disappointed with them really. I thought they'd finish a little bit higher up. Aston Villa back to doing what they do very well, finishing in the Champions League under Unai Emery. They've had a great season, and again I wasn't too far away with my prediction for Brighton. Moving on a couple more places, I had Tottenham and Newcastle. Now these are 2 absolute stinkers here. Clearly I got Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur very wrong, but I thought Spurs, surely this is the season where they finally get everything together. They ended last season winning a trophy, but no, they avoided relegation on the final day, and the way some of their players did celebrate that, you're playing for Tottenham Hotspur, I thought was incredibly embarrassing. But yeah, another absolutely shocking season for Spurs, and they've kind of been saved by West Ham being just as poor for large parts, especially under Potter at the start of the season. In terms of Newcastle, again another team which really did underwhelm me this season. I know they obviously lost Isak in the summer, but this season has been a shambles, and I'm surprised Eddie Howe has survived it, to be completely honest with you. I know he's done very well at Newcastle, but this season just seemed like a step too far, and there needs to be a bit of a freshen up, a bit of a change at Newcastle. You look at the money they've spent in the summer, and a lot of their signings didn't really work out. Their big star signing in Nick Walter-Madu, who came in to replace Alexander Isak, just ended up playing in central midfield. So Eddie Howe, I don't think he'll have long left there if he does start next season in that job. The final couple of spots then, we can see that I had Man City having a bit of a drop off and finishing 4th. Obviously they pushed Arsenal right to the death and they ended up finishing in 2nd place. Chelsea, I was incredibly wrong about them. I can't even remember who was their manager at the start of the season. It might have honestly even been Maresca. I have no idea. They have so much changeover of players and management at Chelsea, I genuinely could not tell you, but I do think the appointment of Xabi Alonso is a great one. But Chelsea finishing 10th in the Premier League is absolutely embarrassing, but I'm not surprised by it, looking at their recruitment over the last couple of years, relying on players like Garnacho, Chalobah, these sort of players to get you titles potentially, win your competitions. I just do not see it whatsoever. I think they've got the odd couple of decent players in there, you know, like Reece James, Caicedo, Fernandes on his day, Palmer on his day, João Pedro, but they've got so much just absolute dross in their side. Garnacho, Pedro Neto, these type of players, I just don't rate them whatsoever. Obviously, I had Arsenal to finish second, finish runners-up once again. Obviously, they did end up going on and winning the Premier League, and then obviously I had Liverpool going back-to-back again, but they massively fell off this season under Slot. Massively disappointed and underperformed, I thought, especially with Isak coming in, Ekitike as well. Liverpool surely going to go back-to-back, but they were absolutely awful, and in the end finished in 5th. So what does that mean then? If you add up all of the differences, how many points would I have accumulated? Now, we've done this in the Premier League for the last 3 seasons, and this season is my worst ever in terms of Premier League predictions. You add up all of my points and you accumulate 86, comfortably my worst ever. I've no idea how I managed less than half of what I got this year, 2 years ago in 23-24, only 42 points. I don't ever see myself breaking that, but yeah, we're not off to a great start in today's video. Starting out with the Premier League, they're my worst ever Premier League predictions. Moving on then into the Championship, bottom of the table, I predicted at Sheffield Wednesday, and I got that one absolutely spot on, so that's a great start. But again, there's not many that I got absolutely spot on in today's video. Second bottom, I had Preston. They finished in 14th and were in and around the playoffs for the first couple of months of the season, but obviously massively fell off, and I think Hecky's done a great job there, in all honesty, and obviously I was clearly very wrong about them. I thought this would be the year where Stoke dropped down into League One, but they finished in their obligatory 17th place. When we played them back at the end of August, we battered them 3-0 at their place in the EFL Cup. They were top of the Championship table, I think, at that point, but again, it just seems to be a curse at Stoke City, where once again they finished in 17th. In terms of the final bottom half of the table, I had Hull just about avoiding relegation. I thought, looking at where they were at the end of last season and then kind of the transfer embargo I think that they had over the summer, I don't think this is honestly a unrealistic prediction. You look at XG, I'm pretty sure their XG would tell you they deserve to be relegated this season. But you look at the job that their gaffer's done there, incredible. Ollie McBurney been fantastic, obviously graduated through the Bradford City Academy, but what a season that Hull have had. Charlton, I was only 1 place out with them, pretty happy with that prediction. Watford and QPR, again, only 3 places out with them predictions. I think QPR though did underperform considering some of the business that they did in the summer. Blackburn, again, only 3 places out with that one, not too displeased with it. Oxford, 6 places out. I thought they'd finish a lot better than where they did. In the end, they were obviously relegated with a couple of games to spare, which is obviously disappointing for them, but I think anytime Oxford are in the Championship, they are overachieving, and for me, they're one of the few favourites to be the League One champions going down into next season. Derby, I was a fair few places off with them. I thought they'd finish in the bottom half. They only just missed out on the playoffs on the final day. They had some real big players who stepped up this season. I really like their manager in Eustace. I think they could certainly be challenging once again for the playoffs next season. Portsmouth, they underachieved a little bit, but it just came down to a lack of goals and a lack of quality in the final third. I thought defensively, for the large part this season, they were a lot better. I know they had the odd battering still, like away at QPR, for example, but I do think that was a bit of an anomaly, and again, I was only a couple places out with that one. Middlesbrough, again, fair few places out with this one, but I wasn't convinced on the appointment of Rob Edwards. I knew scoring goals was going to be an issue this season for Middlesbrough, and that's how it did prove to be. Obviously, they had the old Spygate drama in the playoffs in the end, but they lost out in the semi-finals and then also lost out in the final as well. But again, considering where Middlesbrough were at the start of the season, I don't think that's the worst prediction in the world. Obviously, no one could have seen that they would get money for Rob Edwards, and they're bringing Kim Hellberg, and obviously did very well in the second half of the season, especially. In terms of the top half, again, there is a couple of stinkers in here. I got Bristol and Bristol City and Swansea City the wrong way around, but only 1 place out for both of those predictions. Then we get to West Brom and Leicester. A lot of people had Leicester in the top 2, or definitely top 6, and I got a lot of stick for saying that they finished in 9th, and look what happened. Back-to-back relegations for them, absolutely dreadful. Just the writing was on the wall, really. So much ego in there for such a lack of ability. If you were a Leicester fan, which there might be a couple watching this video, you surely absolutely despise those players who played for you this season. In terms of West Brom, again, they massively did underachieve. Not quite as bad as Leicester, but an absolutely shocking season for them, and if it wasn't for Morrison, I think the former player at West Brom, then they would have probably join Leicester in League One next season. As a Bradford City fan though, quite looking forward to going to Leicester away. I'm sure their fans, having only won the Premier League and the FA Cup in the last decade, are probably not so keen on coming to Bradford. Millwall, I was 5 places out with them. I thought they'd just miss out on the playoffs. In the end, that draw late on against Leicester, that proved to be the difference between them finishing in the Premier League and finishing in the Championship for next season. Norwich only a couple of places out on them. In terms of the playoff places, I had Southampton just getting in there, and again a lot of controversy around them. Surely their gaffer's got to get the sack or some type of FA ban because of the whole Spygate scenario, and they've admitted to a couple of other charges, but they've probably done it a lot more than that as well. Kind of just the law of averages would suggest. Wrexham, I thought, would finish in the playoffs, only just missed out, and I do think it was a little bit of an underachievement given the amount of money that they did spend. Sheffield United, I know a lot of blame gets put on Ruben Sellers, but they did massively underachieve this season, finishing in the bottom half. Given where they were at the end of last campaign, they should have never sacked Wilder, then they should have never brought in Ruben Sellers, but just an awful season on the whole for Sheffield United, and one I'm sure they will be hoping to forget very quickly. I had Coventry in third position. They obviously won the title. Frank Lampard's done a great job there this season. As my top 2, in second place, I had Birmingham, who massively underachieved this season, and I also had Ipswich Town winning the league. Birmingham, I thought, for where they were at the end of last season, I think they broke the EFL points record, and obviously they spent a lot of money in the summer as well. They certainly massively did underachieve, and I do think Chris Davies is not the man to take them forward at long term. Obviously, I had Ipswich winning the league. They finished in second. They did underachieve a little bit though. They only scraped it, didn't they, on the final day, but I think they've got a much better chance this time around of staying in the Premier League than what they did last time, but even then it's going to be a big ask for them to survive. So that concludes my Championship predictions. Again, if you were to add up all of the differences, I haven't done as bad in the Championship. We've done it in the previous 3 seasons now in England's third tier, and this is, on paper, one of my better seasons. Obviously, the 22-23 season was incredible for me, where I got 88 points, but this is my second best season. Last year was my worst, but it's an improvement on the whole. It's still not great, still nowhere near as good as my first season, but for the Championship, I don't think that's too bad. Let's move on to League One. Moving on then into League One. Now, obviously, my team, Bradford City, play in this league, but we hadn't done for a number of years, so coming into this League One season, I didn't really know what to expect, but I got 3 out of the 4 relegated sides spot on. I did get them in a little bit of a different order. I had Wimbledon to finish rock bottom, and their season was so interesting. They had a great start, then they had a massive dip, then they went on another great run, and then they ended the season absolutely awfully, and I do worry about them long term going into it next season, but they managed to survive, which was ultimately their aim. I think pretty much everybody had them to be relegated, if not finish bottom, and the fact that at one point they were in around the playoffs and ended up finishing in this position, I do think they have kind of flattered to deceive a little bit at times this season. I know obviously injuries have killed them and they don't quite have the squad depth in there to really compete when those injuries do come, but next season I do worry about them a little bit. However, I had Exeter, Northampton and Rotherham to all be relegated, and they all were. Yes, I got them in a slightly wrong order, but I'm pretty happy with that. I was 2 positions out with all of those, but again, relatively pleased on the whole that I've got 3 out of the 4 relegated sides absolutely spot on. And the other side that I predicted to be relegated wasn't a million miles away from. Moving on into the bottom half, Peterborough only 2 places out with them. Port Vale were the final team who were officially relegated, and I had them only just about avoiding relegation, so I don't think my relegation predictions this season were too bad. Burton only 1 place out on them. Doncaster for a first season for them back in League One, again only 3 places out. Then you look after it, where I've accumulated, 34 points from 3 positions. Lincoln, 15 places out. Stevenage, 9 places out. Bradford, 10 places out. We'll start firstly with Lincoln, who without a doubt were the best team in League One this season. They were absolutely fantastic. I ran out of words to describe Lincoln in like March sort of time. They were incredible, outstanding, brilliant, fantastic. They were just the ultimate model that every League One club should be trying to follow to get promoted. Years and years of excellent recruitment, and it finally has paid off for them. I know there's been a lot of interest already in Michael Skubala, for example, but I really hope he stays at Lincoln City, because I think they're going to probably finish in and around mid-table next season in the Championship. I really think they're going to go there and do incredible things in that division. Stevenage, again, a lot of places out for them. We knew that defensively Stevenage were a strong side, but not as strong as maybe what they proved to be this season. Scoring goals was ultimately their issue, and they lost out in the playoff semi-finals to Stockport County, who obviously went on to lose to Bolton Wanderers, but still a fantastic season of overachievement for Stevenage FC. My team, Bradford City, I thought putting us 14th was maybe being a little bit optimistic. I would have snapped your hand off for 20th place at the start of the season, but to finish in the playoffs and lose out to the eventual winners in Bolton Wanderers, certainly no shame in that. When you think about, we probably had around a mid-table, maybe slightly lower half budget coming into this season. I know we had a fantastic home record last campaign in League 2, but I don't think anybody would have backed Bradford to finish in those playoffs. I don't feel any type of disappointment in losing to Bolton over 2 legs. They were just simply better than us, and I think that was kind of the end of our chapter, but it's certainly not the end of the book, especially with Graham Alexander, one of, if not the best managers in the division for me. Probably the second biggest overachieving story this season behind Lincoln City, but given that we just come up from League 2 and everyone would have snapped your hand off for 20th place, it was an incredible season. We had some great memories along the way as well, and hopefully we can kick on again next season, but if we finish in around 14th next year, I really don't think it is the end of the world. And then Wigan, 3 places out on them. I know they had a bit of an up and down season. They survived thanks to Gary Caldwell. They were going in the wrong direction under Ryan Lowe, but I think next season they'll kick on a little bit better. So that concludes the bottom half. Into the top half of the table, I was 2 places out with Mansfield Town. A lot of people said that I overestimated Mansfield, but they even finished higher than my estimation. They're a great side, very well run at Mansfield, and they've got one of the best managers in the division for me in Nigel Clough. Cardiff, I was clearly a lot of places out with them, disappointed with that prediction. You know that sometimes when teams come down from the Championship and they have a big turnover of players, they let a lot of players go. I wasn't so sure that a lot of those academy players will be able to step up to what they ended up doing in the end at Cardiff City. Brian Barry Murphy did a fantastic job there this season, and I've been proved incredibly wrong about Cardiff City. 9 places out with that prediction, so again I can only hold my hands up. The Bluebirds, they're called, had a fantastic season. Only 1 place out on Wycombe Wanderers, pretty happy with that. Then Barnsley, Reading and Blackpool certainly all did disappoint me. Reading slightly less so than the other 2, but Barnsley were awful this season. I think they're only going in one direction as a club. Blackpool were fighting relegation from the majority of the season. If it wasn't for, I think it was 5 1-0 wins in the last 6 games or something crazy like that, that ended up propelling them up the table, but still a incredibly underachieving season for Blackpool. And Reading, again, with some of the players that are in their side, you'd maybe expect a little bit better. I know there's a lot of turmoil at the moment regarding manager Liam Richardson. Into the playoff places then, Plymouth Argyle, I had just sneaking in there in the end. They only just missed out. Later on, I thought I'd finish in there again, and they were woeful. 15 places out with that one, just as bad as my prediction for Lincoln City. If I would have just swapped them around, we could be on for a potential record points for what I've achieved in League 1. Breaking news, again, we're nowhere near that. But yeah, awful season for Leighton Orient, and that's despite having the league's top goal scorer in the division this season. Obviously, key injuries to El Mazouni and Connolly certainly didn't help, but Orient certainly did massively underachieve. Bolton, only 1 place out with that prediction, so I'm pretty happy with that. Luton, I thought I'd only just miss out on automatic promotion, but in the end, they didn't even make it into the playoffs. It was an incredibly slow start to the season for the Hatters, and in the end, that is what cost them, because second half of the season they were absolutely fantastic. And then as my top 2, I had Huddersfield Town in second, who again massively underachieved, and also Stockport County winning the league. You look at the progression that Stockport have made over the last couple of seasons, they've just got better and better, and I thought they were going to do it again this season, but again, key injuries to key players at key times massively did kill them. And there's obviously a big decision to be made regarding Dave Challoner's future, and there's going to be a big squad turnover, I would have thought, this summer as well. But I look at Huddersfield Town, they massively underachieved. They went through a couple of different managers as well throughout the season, obviously for various different reasons as well, but Lee Grant was never going to be the man. Apparently they're thinking about giving it to Martin Drury and John Stead full time, which I think would be an awful decision. As a Bradford City fan, I think that would be the fantastic thing to do. You know, if they're higher ups at Huddersfield are watching this video, give him it on a 5-year deal. Fantastic. Anyway, Huddersfield, they were absolutely garbage. For the money they spent, they were dreadful this season. They got battered at Valley Parade. Yes, they scraped a 1-0 win against us. Very lucky that day that we had some key injuries, but what an awful season for Huddersfield Town, and I'm sure they're dreading coming to Valley Parade again next season. But there are my League One predictions. Now again, certainly not the end of the world. We've been doing League One predictions again for the previous 3 seasons, and this year, again, not too bad. Middle of the range, you would say. My second worst season, or my third best season. Again, 23-24 seems to be a great season for me, unless I've just done a lot of maths very wrong. But in whatever league, that does seem to be a good year. This year, 116 points, certainly not as bad as last season, but again, this was my first season really focusing on League One in a very long time, so I'm happy to have improved on last campaign. Hopefully we can go better next season. Let's move on to League 2 before we end today's video. And finally then, moving on into League 2, bottom of the table, I had Accrington Stanley. I was 8 places out with that prediction, and also going down, I had Cheltenham Town, again at 5 places out with that prediction. Accrington did incredibly well to finish in at 16th. Again, I didn't really follow League 2 at all this season now that Bradford City were out of it. It's an absolute hellhole of a division, but fair play to Accrington and also Cheltenham as well. In the bottom half of the table, I had Harrogate just about avoiding relegation along with Newport County, so again only 1 place out for both of those predictions. I thought Walsall were going to massively underachieve this season, and in the end that is what they did. 7 places out with that prediction. They still finished in the bottom half of the table, and Matt Sadler eventually got the sack, but it just seems to be not a great place to be at Walsall. They made a great signing in January in Alex Patterson, but he didn't really kick on there either. In 19th I had Oldham. I was 9 places out with that one. They finished in the top half. Really good first season back at this level for the Ticks. But Bromley is by far and away my worst prediction I've done in today's video across all of the divisions. 17 places out with that prediction. Absolutely shocking from me. Fair play to Bromley. They had an absolutely fantastic season, won the league title, which nobody could have predicted, and they'll be looking to kick on and try and stay in League One next season. They've been overachieving for a number of years now, but to win the League 2 title is an absolutely incredible achievement, and what a gaffer that Andy Woodman is. I had Barrow finishing in and around the bottom half. They finished rock bottom and had about 17 different managers this season. They were absolutely terrible, so I was 7 places out with that prediction, but it's nice to see them go back down into non-league, because that away end is probably the worst that I have ever experienced. Crewe Alexandria in 16th, they finished in 11th, so not too far away with that one. Fleetwood Town is one that I did get absolutely spot on. We didn't get a single one accurate in League One, but we've got one right there in Fleetwood Town. Barnet, I had finishing in 14th for their first season back in the Football League. They ended up finishing in 8th and only just missed out on the playoffs, so what a first season back in the EFL for Barnet. And completing the bottom half, I had Cambridge finishing in 13th. Thought there was going to be a little bit of turmoil there this season, but they ended up winning automatic promotion and getting back up into League One at the first time of asking, so what a season that has proved to be at Cambridge. In terms of the top half of the table, we had Crawley finishing in mid-table. They only just about avoided relegation on the final day. It might have even been on goal difference potentially as well. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, Crawley were absolutely terrible. Again, big changeover of players there. They obviously had the likes of Harry McCurdy there this season as well, and I know they had a couple of different managers, but it's just not worked at Crawley over the last couple of seasons, and obviously they've nearly gone back to back, which we have seen a few clubs do over the last decade or so. I had Shrewsbury finishing in 11th, and they massively underachieved and ended up finishing in 19th, just really poor. Tranmere again massively underachieved there, then finishing in 10th. Sacked a couple of managers across the season and only just about avoided relegation. Again, another one on the final day. You look at some of the business that they did in the summer, the likes of bringing in Richie Smallwood, and that just simply did not work out at Tranmere whatsoever. He was excellent at Bradford last season, did very well at Bristol Rovers in the second half of the season as well, so it must be something at Tranmere Rovers. It looks like they're going to lose a few of their better players as well to maybe divisions below, so I am a little bit concerned about Tranmere for the long term. 9th place I had Notts County. They ended up finishing in 5th and obviously won the League 2 playoffs. Delighted for Notts County, proper football club back in League 1 as as well. They've been a club on the rise over the last couple of seasons. I wasn't entirely convinced about Martin Patterson as a manager, which I've got a bit of stick for on Twitter. I thought they'd finish in and around mid-table, but they've had a really good season. Obviously, they're now back in League One as well. And completing the top half, I had Colchester in 8th. They ended up finishing in 12th. Couldn't quite kick on from last campaign and will probably lose a few of their key players this summer. The likes of Matt Macy, I think, is already announced he's leaving. Arthur Reed could potentially move on as well, but certainly not the worst prediction in the world from me there. In terms of the playoffs, I had Grimsby absolutely spot on. I had them to finish 7th, and that's what they did. Obviously, they lost out in the semi-finals to Salford City, who eventually lost out in the final, but still a great season for Grimsby, and delighted with that prediction. Swindon looked like they were going to finish in and around here for quite a while, but they capitulated in the second half of the season. Ian Holloway is not a manager that I rate at all. He did a great job steering them away from relegation last season, but it's clear for all to see that some of the things that he comes out with in his interviews and all that sort of stuff just simply does not help the players. And obviously, I think they missed Harry Smith for the majority of the season with an ACL injury. That'll teach him probably to not celebrate how he did in Jack Shepherd's face. Bristol Rovers, I had finishing in 5th. They massively underachieved and finished in 14th. And we're in a real relegation scrap until obviously Steve Evans went in there, made some really good January signings. Richie Smallwood and Tommy Lee, a couple of former Bradford players coming in as well, and they did do a pretty good job, but still on the whole a massively underwhelming season for Bristol Rovers. But Gillingham, they were even worse. I had them to finish in 4th. I think I've had Gillingham in and around promotion over the last couple of seasons, and I thought under Gareth Wainsworth, surely this is the time, but again, 17th. It seems like Gillingham are just destined for misery, and I think they've released a lot of players going into this summer, and it did need to happen, but 13 places out with that prediction. If I'd have just swapped them and Bromley, again, these would have been much better. In terms of the automatic promotion places then, I had Salford and Chesterfield, with also MK Dons winning the league title. Just a single place out with Salford and MK Dons, so pretty happy with that. Obviously, Salford ended up losing out though in the playoff final to Notts County. MK Dons lost out on the title to Bromley. I think they drew with Fleetwood, I want to say, on the final day. And Chesterfield, I thought, would really push for the top 2 this season, but they ended up finishing in 6th. And again, more playoff misery and heartbreak in the semi-finals for Paul Cook's side. So that summarises my League 2 table predictions. What does that do for the points tally? Obviously, we've been doing this for a couple of years longer than a lot of the other divisions, and it's in and around average again. The exact same amount of points as I achieved in the 23-24 season. So not as bad as last year, not as bad as my first season, but also nowhere near as good as the 21-22 campaign. It's in and around what you would expect. On the whole, there's only a couple that are massively out, which is something that normally does happen, and it really kills it. You need the league to be a little bit more accurate, but I do think the EFL and just general English football is the hardest leagues to predict in the world. They're impossible, but again, not too disappointed with my League 2 predictions there. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there then for today's video. If you have enjoyed it, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well if you are new. Can we try and hit 200 likes, as I said at the start of today's video? And don't forget to let me know your scores down in the comment section down below. How good or how bad were your table predictions from the Premier League and the EFL? Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon for another one.